You're listening to the Bitcoin Takeover Podcast, the Bitcoin podcast for OGs and intermediaries. Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode. Also, read the new BTC KVR magazine. This episode is sponsored by Wasabi Wallet, Crypto Steel, Shop in a Bit, and Satodime. Thank you for listening.
Hello there and welcome to the Bitcoin Takeover Podcast. I am Vlad, your Bitcoin influencer's influencer, and today I'm joined by Peter Todd and Sergej Kotliar, two very influential people in Bitcoin who have positioned themselves in different sides of the full RBF debate. And Peter has the most obvious stance right now. He expresses it with his hat. Sergej likes the New York Yankees, and that's what he expresses with his hat. But Bitrefill apparently does not agree as a business. And also Synonym, which is created by John Carvalho, but they are the ones that were against full RBF. And I'm trying to understand the arguments because I read Peter's article, which is very long. It's about 20 minutes. It's a 20-minute read, but it's pretty good. And I'm also trying to understand the business side of the argument because it seems like commercial activity might diminish because of this. So first of all, I want to ask you something on which you're going to agree, and then I'll let you argue.
All right.
So what do you think about this new Bitcoin Takeover magazine?
Well, it's very yellow and very orange,
It's
like
very,
Bitcoin.
It's very Bitcoin, and it has pizza on it. It's great.
I mean,
think
pizza's okay.
I think it has pizza inside as well. But Bitcoiners are not supposed to eat pizza, but they eat pizza anyway.
Hey, it's keto pizza, okay?
It's one of the many values conflicts that we have here in Bitcoin.
So just for the record, Peter contributed to one of the articles with some review, and I would like to thank him for that. But that's not going to affect my moderation. I'm gonna try to not be biased against anyone, and we agreed that each one of them gets to talk for just as long without interruption. So first of all, what is full RBF? You start, Sergej.
Right. Up until at some point, or arguably still, there is a property in Bitcoin called the RBF flag, which one can set on a transaction to make that transaction replaceable with another transaction that pays a higher fee. It's replaced by fee. Up until today, it's been an optional flag. Has been around for 5-6 years, I think, and some people use it. The thing is that many people don't use it, and if you don't use it, there is an emergent property from the way that the Bitcoin network works, is that you get a reasonably high level of security knowing that a transaction that you received is going to eventually confirm even before it's been mined in a block. This is what's called zero-conf, and this has been, it's not part of the consensus. It's not the same level of security as you get from being in a Bitcoin block, of course, but it's still good enough for a lot of cases to work reliably, to have an error rate of like much less than 1 in 100,000 transactions. Every company that lets people buy stuff with Bitcoin at scale uses this type of dynamic in order to provide a better user experience, because a lot of people don't understand what this whole blockchain thing is. Why do I have to wait? I might I've run out of data on my phone and I need to refill it, and the sort of the answer of you'll have to wait for an unspecified amount of time is not always satisfactory for users, and provides for a bad user, less good user experience, let's say. And so all of the companies that are doing payments, not just Bitrefill, not just Synonym, I mean, it's just expressing his mind, but all of the others, if you talk to any of our competitors, any of the payment processor business and so on, they would all agree with this line of thinking. It's just that I think we and a few others have been the ones that spoke out about it in the mailing list and so on, and many others just didn't, I guess. But so the idea is to change the way that the Bitcoin network works, such that every transaction will always be able to be replaceable, and so therefore it will be trivial to cancel a transaction. Wallets will have a cancel transaction button, so you can't obviously rely on any transaction that you receive until it's in a block, or ideally probably even 2 blocks, I would say, because there are reorgs, and then canceling would be a thing again.
Right. Peter, what is full RBF?
Well, I think some of that explanation was all right. I mean, starting from the very beginning of Bitcoin, transactions were replaceable. But Satoshi's initial implementation of this with end-sequence field turned out to be DOS attackable. So this eventually got replaced by the idea of transactions will be replaced if they pay a higher fee with this opt-in RBF bit set. But I think the real disagreement here is about this reliability and also the usefulness of it. I mean, the statement, for instance, that, this is like a 1 in 100,000 thing is certainly not correct. I mean, because, I myself, I've probably done maybe, 10 on-chain transactions in the past year. And one of them, by accident, I went and double spent because I'd sent a transaction with Green Wallet. It had not a high fee, not a kind of a moderate fee. And at the time, of course, transaction fees happened to be going up, and the transaction just didn't get mined. And Green Wallet, like many other wallets, will eventually drop the transaction when it expires, because Bitcoin Core, it's got a timeout where eventually transactions just get dropped from the mempool, and there's technical reasons for that. But when that happened, and I went to go spend again from that same green address wallet. Well, sure enough, it went and reused the same UTXO, and I only realized later that I'd gone and screwed over the person who had gone and paid, 2 weeks earlier. And that was like 1 out of maybe 10 transactions I've actually done on chain. Because essentially all the transactions other than those few I've done on Lightning, which, is the standard way to go accept transactions these days instantly. And I also can't agree with the statement that a lot of places accept zero confirmation transactions. I mean, I've run into very, very few instances where that's accepted. One of the few counterexamples has been in-person Bitcoin exchange, where they already have my AML KYC info. And I'm actually really lucky that the time I accidentally ripped off someone wasn't one of those, because they would have had my info and they would be able to call the cops on me. I mean, simple as that. So for them to accept that on occasion isn't surprising. Although ironically, the double spend that I made by accident was at another AML KYC Bitcoin exchange, and even they had stopped accepting unconfirmed transactions as valid because people by accident were double spending them. I mean, that's just the reality of how this stuff works, and I cannot agree with these claims.
But isn't the Green Wallet one of those wallets that sets the RBF flag to make transactions replaceable on purpose? So.
Well, at the time that it was not, and I was actually using Green Wallet specifically so I could go turn that off. They've since changed that. But at the time, that was not an RBF replaceable transaction. And the reason why it was replaced was not because of the flag. It's because it had expired. Like, it just hadn't been mined for 2 weeks, and I just hadn't noticed because, I use that wallet so rarely. Like I say, nearly everything I do, I use Lightning for.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, to say that everybody should rely. Nobody has said that everybody should rely on unconfirmed transactions. There are certain things that you need to have in place in order to do that. You should probably be like operation with certain infrastructure, make sure that transactions get rebroadcasted and so on. This sort of stuff did happen to us a couple of times in 2017 2018, but since then we've added rebroadcasting, and so at least to us, this sort of thing that doesn't happen with the current fee spikes and the recent fee spikes. So and I mean, the argument, not many companies use it. Well, just go out and ask them. Like, let's go out to, what are the top, the open nodes, your CoinGate, your BitPay, your coin cards, your IBEX, and they all, like, you ping them and say, hey, what do you think about this? And like, oh man, this is bad. Let's not do it. But not all of them participate in the debate. But you said yesterday in your lightning talk that, like, it's a small, loud minority, something like that, that has this view, and I strongly disagree. But I would, I guess, ask what's your argument for that?
Well, I mean, you mentioned CoinGate as an example, and I've used them multiple times in the past year. Every single time I paid with Lightning because that's what they've supported. I've never actually run into a merchant on CoinGate that accepted zero-conf. I've looked on occasion just out of interest, and I just haven't run into these people. I mean, I'm just not sure where you're coming from.
Have you tested? Have you talked to them?
Yeah, I've tested this stuff. It's, as far as I can tell, if it is a flag that they allow, like, it's something that they can set on a per merchant basis. Because certainly I'm just not running into very many merchants who accept this. And I mean, I think the wider context here is, like, you got to remember, this is a trade-off. Full RBF happens to go make multi-party transactions work a lot better. And, a good example is something like Wasabi CoinJoin, where you have transactions created with literally hundreds of potential participants. And the thing that happens in a thing like Wasabi CoinJoin is, if one of those participants double spends their coins with a low fee, they can get the transaction stuck for everyone else, because that low fee will hold up that much higher fee transaction. And as long as they double spend with the RBF flag set off, this is going to happen. And in fact, it just happened apparently a few times recently.
I asked Max yesterday and said that doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, I asked him, like, I walked through, like, one of the recent transactions that got stuck, and, that has happened recently. Right. Like, again, I think we're just disagreeing about basic facts here. But I
think they're using CPFP, not RBF.
No. So point is, in this scenario, someone had accidentally double spent a coin, or maybe intentionally, we can't be sure, and it happened to be about the same time as the CoinJoin itself was created. Well, the low-fee version was the one that got to miners first, and thus the CoinJoin was held up for hours, waiting for something to go happen. And eventually, I'd have to double-check, but I believe in this case, eventually something happened where the CoinJoin eventually did get mined by someone who had dropped the original transaction or replaced it. I'd want to double-check the details on this particular example. But this is why full RBF is good, because it means that in these multi-party situations, which are a significant percentage of blockchain usage these days, and it's going to be higher with Lightning.
Wasabi Wallet is unfairly private. It's the most advanced and most used Bitcoin privacy wallet with 500,000 downloads across Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, as well as thousands of fresh new Bitcoins getting mixed every month. Wasabi makes use of the new generation Wasabi engine to create mega CoinJoins, thus mixing your Bitcoins with those of hundreds of other users. For amounts lower than 0.01 BTC and remixes, you pay no coordination fee. Even if you don't use CoinJoins, Wasabi Wallet has a native Tor integration and downloads block filters to help you keep your network level and public key privacy. Download Wasabi Wallet for free today at wasabiwallet.io and experience the future of Bitcoin privacy.
You guarantee
let's check
progress.
that and compare that with how many purchases happen with zero-conf. I mean, like, I think that you're absolutely right that it's a question of trade-offs, right? We're trade-off. The question is whether or not it's worth turning off this one benefit, let's say, in order to prevent a certain type of, what's the opposite of benefit? Inconvenience that happens somewhere else. And I think a utilitarian approach makes sense to, like, try to assess, like, how much is this happening? How much is that happening? Like, I mean, so like the argument that everybody should just use Lightning, sure, it's great. I agree. Bitrefill has been at the forefront of pushing Lightning in every way, and today we are a very significant percentage of the commercial activity that happens on the Lightning network as a whole. But it's still a fact that 80-90% of Bitcoin users today are not using Lightning, and I wish it wasn't so. I'm working very hard to change that. But it's the reality, and there's no one reason. There's many different reasons for why it's so, but changing the on-chain payment dynamic is not going to make people switch to Lightning. It's just going to make them use Bitcoin less.
But I mean, to be clear, remember, the argument here is not that 90% of Bitcoin users use on-chain. The argument is the percentage of Bitcoin users that use on-chain and take advantage of zero-conf. Now, for instance, with Bitrefill, if I were to go and try to use zero-conf with Bitrefill right now, you guys ask for a fee that's much higher than default to assure that the transaction doesn't get double spent. Because, mempool fields are very high right now. Mempools are completely full.
We have a custom fee estimation algorithm to make sure that it's relatively high.
Well, I'm paying a $25 phone bill. What transaction fee do you want on that $25 phone bill? So at the moment?
We can check, but
go check. Let's see.
It doesn't have anything to do with the phone bill. It doesn't matter what the transaction is.
Because right now, to get next block confirmation, it's on the order of $1.50 for a standard,
we don't charge more than a next block confirmation. We charge a few blocks deep actually, because we do zero-conf if it's a zero-conf transaction.
I mean, last I looked at,
and we don't charge it. We just recommend it.
Yeah, well, you ask for a fee high enough. Yeah. And the problem is, if the fee is low enough, I'm not going to get the advantage of zero-conf because you guys can't accept it.
Yeah, well, we set it within a sensible range for a lot of different reasons. Again, this stuff is not trivial. Don't do this at home.
Well, so I mean, let's go look at it. If I was to go buy that? What fee rate would you want before you'd even accept it?
I guess you pick your service for which you want to pay your bill.
No, I mean, he's the one running a Bitrefill.
Sure, but I mean, I think it's important to say that you're trying to present this as a Bitrefill thing, and it's really not. Again, all major payment processing type business, gift card stores, regular stores, and so on. Not all, but most.
I'm assuming you guys know what you're doing, so that you are probably as optimal as you can be. Thus, you would accept the lowest fee out of any of these services. I mean, other services aren't going to be more reckless.
Right now, Bitrefill requires 40 sats per VByte, and we check compared to Green Wallet.
Well, so compared to mempool.space, 40 sats per VByte is a high priority. So you really want me to go pay a $1.50 transaction fee on my $25 phone bill?
What do you want them to pay?
Well, I mean, obviously, if I use Lightning, it's not going to be very much. And I agree, really got to ask, how many people are really paying this much for this type of service?
I mean, there's an order of magnitude more people that are paying on-chain with zero-conf than are paying with Lightning. So it's again, I wish it wasn't so. I've been pushing Lightning as hard as I can for 5 years now. But the reality is that a lot of people are not switching to Lightning for a bunch of reasons. And in those scenarios, if you the alternative. So my colleague was going to buy a T-shirt here in the store. He went to refill his Lightning wallet from his regular wallet. He made an on-chain transaction actually from Green Wallet. It got stuck in the mempool, and
well, I mean, with Green Wallet, he can go bump the fee.
Probably.
I mean, one of the reasons why Green Wallet dropped the option to turn RBF off was precisely because they were getting support calls from people who send transactions and get them stuck. I mean, it's a terrible user experience. This is why so many wallets don't allow you to turn it off anymore.
Right, but to be honest, I think that I think RBF is useful for a lot of things. It's useful for power users. It's used for programmatic transactions, multiparty, and so on. In terms of regular people using it to bump transactions, we know for a fact that a lot of people are unaware of this dynamic. It's not being exposed. It's not doesn't make sense. We saw, for example, a couple of months ago, we had help of a researcher that ran some data when there was a big dump of transactions from Binance. They dumped 80 blocks at exactly 13.5 or something like that, and so there was a good amount of transactions that were, they had fee estimated, they'd done everything right, they're gonna be next block, and then boom, this thing happened. And out of all of those transactions, it was 1% that successfully did the bump to get above.
Well, hang on. So that's not that 1% successfully did the bump. That's 1% that chose to. These are very different statements.
Sure,
you do not know that those other 99% of transactions were retail transactions that needed to be done in a particular time.
I have no idea about anything.
Yeah.
Neither do you. But we do know. We didn't count the sort of 1 sat per byte we looked at the ones that had used fee estimation and all of these things.
Well, and also your 1% is obviously not correct, because out of that, roughly 30% of transactions turned RBF on these days.
Yeah. But,
and
that's the thing.
So in fact, the percentage is more like 3%.
Of that, yeah.
Yeah, of that.
Yes.
Which, is already sounding kind of high. I wouldn't expect RBF to be something that gets used too often, because obviously a lot of transactions, you go send them and you can go wait. It's fine.
When can you ever send them that you can go wait?
Lots of times. When I go do a deposit to an exchange, for the few times I've done it on chain, usually it's I can go send transaction and it might come.
I think you're making a lot of assumptions about exchange users being like you. I would ask an exchange person, support team to see
what this comes down to, though, is you got to look at how many people are actually doing on-chain commerce. Obviously, if I'm going to pay $1.50 for $25. But that's a pretty strong disincentive.
You're not paying more. It's incorrect to say that zero-conf causes people to pay more.
Yes, it does.
In fact, it causes them to pay less.
No, it means I have to pay a high enough fee that you will accept it as zero-conf.
Well, you could pay a lower fee and not get zero-conf. And you can wait for weeks and weeks, and some people do, and good on them. But
CryptoSteel is the original Bitcoin cold storage backup, and it's been innovating self-custody since 2013. Designed and manufactured in Europe from the finest and most resistant stainless steel, the CryptoSteel cassette and the CryptoSteel capsule are industry standards. These cold storage devices are made to resist house fires, extreme floods, and physical shocks. You can also use CryptoSteel to store your important passwords, BIP39 passphrase, or Nostr private keys. Buy your CryptoSteel today from CryptoSteel.com and use promo code BTCTKVR to get a 10% discount. CryptoSteel. Secure your Bitcoin like an OG.
The idea, and this is very important, is that the Bitcoin mempool and the blocks are unpredictable. Even in normal times, even if you ignore things like Binance dumping a bunch of transactions, you don't know, is the next block going to be in 10 minutes or is it going to be an hour, 2 hours? You don't know what the fee rates are going to be. There's a high likelihood that you would need to bump the fees and so on. And again, a lot of people are not able to figure out how to do it. We frequently get support tickets from people who use the wallet that has RBF set to on, that have their transaction stuck, and they're wondering what to do.
How is this situation? Again, if I go upstairs to the ATM that's actually just above our heads, and I want to go and deposit money into there and get cash back, it does not let me do it with zero-conf, because it's just not safe enough for them to go do this.
Some do, some don't, right?
Well, I've run into very few that allow this, with the one exception of things that have AML KYC, which is not depending on zero-conf.
Okay.
And even in that case,
sure,
like I said before, they're switching because users by accident double spend them, which causes headaches.
How about, why don't we lift this up a certain level? Because a bunch of people are using Bitcoin in a certain way. You're arguing that it is bad, and therefore we should change the way that the network works. Because other things are more valuable.
I think our big disagreement, though, is that statement a bunch of people. I'm not seeing the evidence for that. If I go and buy, a bit of file hosting on Bitcoin, or like, there's file download sites, an example, that have been supporting Bitcoin for years. I've never seen any of them.
But hang on. This is anecdotal.
I've never seen any of them that allowed me to get a service for on-chain Bitcoin without a confirmation. Mulvad, the VPN, it wants confirmation before it gives me service. I'm not seeing the evidence that this is actually widespread. I mean, you seem to
Have you
think
looked?
so. I have, and I'm sorry, but I keep on running into services that do not accept zero-conf over and over and over
think
again.
you have
You're
a
one of the
selection
very
bias.
few. Well, you're one of the very few I've seen that do.
No, but like I would talk to like the big players, the open nodes. I haven't checked CoinGate myself, but I'm pretty sure that they do the same as we do.
You should go check this.
Well, I asked the open node. I asked OpenNode and Ibex because I know them personally, and I don't know CoinGate, so I didn't ask them.
Does OpenNode accept Lightning?
Of course. Does the majority of transactions on OpenNode come from on-chain?
Well, I mean, like, again, the fact of the matter is, over and over again, I see people just not accepting zero-conf. You are one of the very few services I've found. Like, name an actual merchant who I can go right now on the internet and get something for zero-conf, other than Bitrefill.
Check CoinCards is one of our competitors. Check OpenNode. I would check.
Well, no. OpenNode's a payment gateway. I mean, an actual merchant using them.
I mean, there is a problem that relatively very few merchants are using using
your
Bitcoin
argument
at all.
is it's so big, yet you can't actually give an example of a merchant. I mean, if this was something that was widely used, you'd have a very easy time. But like I say, even the ATM above our heads does not accept.
That's not fair. That's ingenious. I
gave you
there are
a whole bunch of examples of things that did not accept zero-conf. I mean, my VPN provider.
I gave you a bunch of examples of things that do accept zero-conf.
You gave examples of services that potentially could
that represent a large chunk.
But you haven't given me an example of actual merchants using these services.
What difference does it make if it's a merchant or if it's a payment processor?
I mean, for instance, I don't know whether or not a case with a payment processor. Certainly, if a merchant gets double spent, obviously the payment processor is not going to just go and give them their money. There will be some mechanism where eventually they're going to cut the losses. Now, if zero-conf works so well,
I don't know if it's like that.
Hang on, if zero-conf works so well, surely tons of merchants would go turn it on, and you'd find a very easy way to say, oh yeah, there's this merchant, this merchant, this merchant. But you're not saying that. You're saying, yeah, these payment processors offer it as an option, but you're not providing the evidence that this actually gets used.
We can ask them. I mean, we can ask either of them. I've asked the founders
I would have
what they
expected
do.
you to come to this debate with this information.
I'm coming to.
But you're not providing the important detail of things that actually accept it. You're providing a detail of payment processors.
So you have Ibex announced. The thing is that merchants that accept Bitcoin are as a whole, like gift cards are a big chunk of consumer commerce with crypto. Like
how do you know?
Very big.
How do you know?
We ran estimations.
How? How do you know this?
You make guesstimates. Do you have companies
how
like
do you know how
BitPay
much business like Mulvad does, as an example?
No, I mean you can't know for sure, but you use whatever publicly available data and you make an estimation.
I mean, you mentioned BitPay, and like BitPay is an example where I can't pay on BitPay without getting doxxed. People say BitPay is a joke.
BitPay is problematic, and they're relatively small. I mean, still probably orders of magnitude larger than Mulvad, but
well, how do you know this?
Well, BitPay's number I know. The other things you can kind of guess. But
all right. How many millions of dollars of business does BitPay actually do per year? Like, is that number
year?
Published?
Yes, they publish it on BitPay.com/stats. Probably not, but it's not a very high number, so I don't think it's a lie.
I mean, could you agree at least that it's probably true that the supermajority of Bitcoin transactions are for exchanges?
Yes.
Well, can you name an exchange that will accept zero?
No, exchanges don't do that.
Well, so right there, we've already made the argument that the supermajority of Bitcoin transactions are not using zero-conf because it's for exchanges.
But the supermajority of transactions are also not using multi-party transactions. So, like, yeah, the question is, if you want apples to apples, you compare how many multi-party transactions are happening and how many commercial transactions are happening. And those numbers are actually published, at least if you look at Wasabi and Samurai and you
Wasabi at times gets up to like mid-single digits in terms of total Bitcoin volume. It is a very widely used thing. Obviously,
sure.
I mean, the way people use Wasabi CoinJoin is such
but
that
how many
fees,
transactions?
It's such that as fees go up, people go use it less because usually you CoinJoin in a long time frame. But in terms of percentage of blockchain space, I mean, the number I've heard them say, might get up to like 5% in low fees.
Yeah. Like, again, I think it's good that we're having this conversation. Yeah, I think that sort of when doing things like pushing for a change in how the Bitcoin network de facto works, which it is pushing for a change, it's for one thing, it's important to know how it's being used, and I think it's relevant to sort of take into consideration. We have pros, we have cons, and like the way that Bitcoin generally works is that, there's all kinds of people using it in all kinds of strange and unexpected ways, and like if there's not rough consensus of things, it just tends to not change. And
I mean, to be clear, you're really more talking about how things like soft forks happen. This is not an example of soft fork. This is something where anyone can choose to run this.
But that's a technicality, right?
I don't think it's a significant technicality.
There's a ton of things that are just variables in Bitcoin Core that are de facto properties of the Bitcoin network. Like, there's no consensus saying that...
We don't rely on this stuff. I mean, you do not rely for security reasons on the standardness properties of Bitcoin.
Sure.
You have to accept that transactions can get mined and propagated in all kinds of ways.
Sure.
I mean, with zero-conf itself, every single time Bitcoin Core makes a change to the exact standardness rules, it becomes extremely easy to double spend people because you just send one transaction with slightly
and yet
different things
we
than
do
others.
hundreds of thousands of transactions every year, and we don't see it happening. And our competitors do the same thing.
I don't believe
and
you
don't
on
see
this,
it happening
because I've done this by accident in hundreds of thousands.
So go do it on
sense.
Bitrefill and prove the point. Like I'm giving you carte blanche here. If it's so easy, just click on your phone or whatever and make it happen, and you will have proven your argument. But again, that doesn't really matter because
good examples in Canada. There was a major ATM vendor that did accept zero-conf, and they found themselves defrauded to a tune of about $250,000 and stopped.
Yeah, I read that. You posted that link, and that story, they were being defrauded every day for 10 days, and it took them 10 days until they turned it off. So I think it's pretty safe to say that these guys did not mega know what they were doing, and maybe not see them as
I mean, this might explain why so few people actually accept
but
this.
But it's not so few.
Well, again, you can't even provide an example of another merchant No, you provide an example of payment processor.
CoinCards sells gift cards and
all right, so you have Bitrefill and CoinCards. So you have two entities you can go name that accept zero-conf.
And I think that those two entities do probably half of all of the commercial activity.
Remember the paper wallet? Ah, yes, the good old days when you printed your Bitcoin private key on an offline computer? It was so fun, but not really easy and totally not secure. Today, we have Dime, a chip card that acts just like your good old paper wallet, but with all the modern security features and top-notch functionality. It turns your Bitcoin into a bearer asset, which you can easily trade in person. Thanks to NFC, you can use the Dime card with your smartphone. Creating a new pair of Bitcoin keys takes just 2 swipes. Check your balance in real time, create multiple key pairs. Whenever you want, you can reveal your Bitcoin wallet's private key with just a single click. The simple, uncluttered interface lets you quickly see if a key pair has been unsealed. Finally, the cold storage you've been looking for. Available now on Dime.io.
Well, I mean, this sounds very centralized. Like one argument you can go make here is if we have a system where only highly centralized entities with big engineering teams can make use of,
sure,
that gives them a huge advantage. That's not good for Bitcoin. We don't want to give Bitrefill an advantage where like mom and pop.
And so the alternative because the user experience of paying and waiting for an unspecified amount of time for a transaction to confirm is the companies will start offering accounts, like Bitrefill has accounts, and when people have this issue, we'll direct them to accounts. We do that with RBF customers already, and that, if something, is a centralizing pressure. And I'm trying to actually sort of decentralize, make it easier for people to run a BTC
we
Pay
have
or whatever.
Lightning. I mean, that's the way this stuff's going to end up going. Also, I mean, the fact is, if we go tell people,
Lightning's been stuck at 3% of transactions for like 3-4 years. Like, let's be real about this.
Lightning
Let's
is
try
definitely growing, and one way I can go see
It
that
is
the fact
growing.
that here, sitting in like Polis or however heck you pronounce that.
This place is not representative of Bitcoin users as a whole. It's a very important fact. Like,
I mean, your service isn't represented Bitcoin users as a whole. We've already established the supermajority of transaction volume is between exchanges. I mean,
is that a good thing? Isn't that a centralizing factor?
I don't think it's good or bad.
But
I mean, it's just how people use Bitcoin.
Like, we shouldn't argue about that. I mean, the question is, people are using Bitcoin a certain way. Should we break it for whatever reason?
Well, I don't want to say we're breaking it. I would say we are going and fixing up a big problem with it, which is that people go send transactions that get stuck. I mean, this is why wallet authors have been turning off the ability to disable RBF.
Yeah, only very minor niche wallets such as Green Wallet.
Well, what do you think is a major wallet?
I mean, I presented data on major used wallets that we collect. It's user submitted, but it's directionally trustworthy. It corresponds to our experience talking to customers.
Well, what's your like major wallets?
Things like Exodus, blockchain.com, bitcoin.com, orders of magnitude larger than the Green Wallet. And so optimizing what the many... breaking what the many use, even if you don't like it.
Let's go into a bit more detail.
The few use.
I mean, I've seen how you go and get wallet info. I mean, what you go do is you ask users to say, whereas the default is I don't have to do that, and I just get an address to go put money into. Now, what percentage of people click through the wallet versus just get an address?
40%.
40%. So... right there, I mean, that looks like a very
and the other
skewed
60%
thing.
are all using Green Wallet, of course.
Well, no, I mean, and they're likely people who use a wallet that's somewhat more sophisticated and don't realize, like, and aren't dumb enough to.
I mean,
click through this
Electrum shows up in the stats. We see Bitcoin Core shows up in the stats. Like, a lot of wallets show up in the stats. Green Wallet does not show up in the stats. But
I mean, to be clear, I mean, Bitcoin Core these days is RBF by default too.
Yeah, but
Electrum is. In fact, Electrum's another example, which is getting rid
but these
of
are
RBF.
power user wallets. They know what they're doing. Like, I'm talking about the normies, the regular people, the broad majority of people who use Bitcoin in the world.
Well, I mean, when I've been in places where quote unquote ordinary people have been using Bitcoin, it's been places in like Macedonia where you go sit in a Bitcoin exchange for a while, and people come in and out with their Binance accounts in USDT. Yeah. I mean, that's the main way that money gets transferred around. And the few and
the more we break Bitcoin, the more of that we're going to see. And this is why I'm making this argument.
But I mean, the fact is, like, mempool fullness breaks Bitcoin for that use case anyway. I mean, that like you can't get away from this. I mean,
no, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
We've been doing fine through multiple fee spikes. So it's just I think this is one of the cases.
$10 transaction fees for phone cards? No, you're not.
I'm presenting this data on stage in 15 minutes, so you can come and listen, and you'll see there's nuance to these things. I think
the nuance here is like what you're doing is that part of what you're doing is a dying business. That's just inevitable. Transaction fees go up. Like
the fact that something
crazy.
The fact that something is inevitable is not the reason to break it. If kids made a sandcastle on the beach, would you go jump on it just because the sandcastle is going to?
Being able to replace transactions, having multi-party transaction work, this isn't breaking stuff.
We're breaking one thing, fixing another, right? And the people that are using the one thing are providing feedback, real-world data, and so on. And you're coming back with, in theory, it doesn't work in theory, but
well, I mean, again, you came to us. You came here with 2 examples of merchants that accepted zero-conf. And, of course, like I said, there's very few I've run into that accept this at all. Even places that are
I
KYC.
came to you with examples of major merchants and payment processor businesses that represent a significant chunk
in your
of the known commercial
payment
activity.
process business is misleading because that is a service that provides a service, but you did not say whether or not that service actually gets used. If I have a CoinGate account, my understanding is I can choose whether or not to accept zero-conf. And I've never run
most
into
of
anyone...
CoinGate's transactions are sales of gift cards
I've
selling
never
on
run
their
into a
websites.
CoinGate thing that accepted zero-conf.
Let's go and ask them. Again, I asked the OpenNote people, I asked the IBEX people, I got the same response. They're doing the same as we do, and they feel the same way that we do. Whether or not it's an option and what the risk profile is, I actually don't. Don't know.
It's unfortunate.
It doesn't change the question of should we just run out and change something that some people, significant number of people, are using with Bitcoin that is working well, reliably, according to their data, according to real world data that hasn't been disproven. It's not like we're running a leaky funnel and we're just doing it for fun. You can't argue with data.
No, I don't think you can argue that this has been even proven.
There's nothing to prove here. It's just statistically, it doesn't happen.
What is to be
aviation planes crash?
So your argument
should we
here
stop
is
flying?
Shop and Bit is the online store where you can buy anything with your Bitcoin. Choose between more than 800,000 products, book flights and hotels, and order everything else through the concierge service. With Shop and Bit, you can buy your weekly groceries, get the latest iPhone, upgrade your computer, buy something sexy for your new girlfriend, book a trip to El Salvador through the travel hacking service, and also grab a copy of the latest Bitcoin Takeover magazine to read in the airplane. Everything is integrated with a familiar shopping experience that doesn't track you and deletes your data after the order gets completed. You also get a 3% discount if you pay in Bitcoin. Try Shop and Bit today and use promo code BTCTKVR for a €5 discount on your first order.
Statistically, double spends don't happen. I mean, we have an example in Canada of an ATM provider that got ripped off an enormous amount of money. Certainly, if double spends didn't happen, the ATM above our heads would
It's implementation details. Because the argument is certainly the ATM above our heads would accept zero-conf. Well, if double spends did happen, then certainly Bitrefill wouldn't be accepting them. So it's the same argument.
I mean,
I'm sitting here. I'm not talking about someone specified who's not here.
Well, I mean, it seems to me that the way Bitrefill does it is actually kind of hard to be in a position where I can go make a non-trivial amount of money off you this way, which also suggests to me that maybe you're not actually as vulnerable to zero-conf double spends as you expect, and it wouldn't make that much of a difference.
What do you mean?
Look, if I go and double spend you, I will wind up with a gift card that pretty quickly gets attached to my real-world identity.
No, gift cards are the second most theft-prone product in the world. We get attacked all day, every day. We get user accounts getting hacked. We get us trying to get hacked. We have every one of our payment methods has been attacked. We have centralized payment methods that have been attacked. We have customers trying to scam our support. Gift cards are extremely desirable for fraud. And the fact that we're not seeing this breakdown for selling the number 2 after Bitcoin most fraud-prone product in the world shows that it is relatively reliable. And the fact that our competitors are doing the same with the same results.
Well, yet entities that sell cash, which is clearly desirable for fraud, they wind up not accepting zero-conf because it is too risky.
So good on them.
This
like some people use it, some people don't. This seems suspicious. Okay, I'm sitting here in the open. I'm presenting my data regularly.
And I'm
what else
why
can
your
be?
data probably shouldn't be believed because there's something off about what you're saying.
Why? What's my incentive? What am I trying to do here?
I think your incentive is try to go push a business model that isn't actually working that well. I mean, I've run into this myself with like ATM providers where I've had them reach out to me for consulting for how to go stop zero-conf double spends from happening. And one of the things they say is, well, shit, please keep this private because our investors are going to learn that our business doesn't work that well.
Okay, so
I'm not sure I trust you that much.
You don't have to trust me. I don't trust you either. Like Bitcoin at this point is around 30% of our volume. Bitrefill is going to be fine. We have user accounts. We have centralized accounts. We have Lightning. We have
so we
Tether
can
and
do
Tron.
full RBF. Bitrefill will be fine. Good.
We will be fine. I think Bitcoin will be worse off, and this is why I'm bringing it up. Because my desired outcome for Bitcoin is for many people to be using Bitcoin. I'm not against people using other things, but I would prefer that they were using Bitcoin. And so it breaks my heart to see things that are working reliably and well being broken for a noble cause, for an exploit that is not happening at any regularity.
To be clear, it is happening. Wasabi got hit with it just the other week.
They told me they didn't. So
I spoke to them recently, and I
maybe
believe
you
they
would hit. Maybe.
And
I really need to go. I have a talk in 5 minutes.
Thanks for being here.
You can have the last word.
I will say we do agree on one thing. Nice shirt.
Thank you.
Can we do a part 2 or something?
Could be interesting.
All right.
It would be great to do a part 2. And just for the record, some people might be confused right now. RBF is a proposal by Peter Todd from 2013. I think it was 2013.
Well, RBF is a proposal that's been in Bitcoin since 2016. Full RBF is something which is an option in Bitcoin. Quite literally, if you put mempool full RBF equals 1 in your Bitcoin comp file, you turn it on.
By default, Bitcoin transactions used to rely on this principle of first seen, and they would be put in the mempool. Is this correct? And you would wait for a confirmation until a miner picked up your transaction according to the fee that you paid. But as more activity started pouring into Bitcoin, it got more difficult to get your transaction confirmed, and in some cases there were nodes that were dropping your transaction after a certain amount of time.
Can we?
Mining is an auction, but
I really need to run.
You should run.
Thanks, guys.
So there's gonna be a second part.
Yeah, thank you.
Make sure you subscribe, leave a comment, and like this episode. Thank you for listening.